My name is Regina Rabenhorst, and I am excited to be here to facilitate today's event. Before we begin, there are a couple quick announcements I just want to make sure you all are aware of. First, please note that we are recording this session. For our virtual attendees, please note that ASL, French, and Spanish interpretation are available to you through the event learning site. And for those of you here with us in person, we do have ASL enabled, interpretation enabled next door. To formally welcome everyone, I would like to invite up at this time Steve Shira, the USAID Contracting Officer's Representative for CATALYZE. Steve.
Wow. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the CATALYZE Global Learning event here. So CATALYZE, we're about halfway through the implementation of here, and I'm the contracting officer's representative. It means I get a credit for a lot of things that people do, but it's not actually credit for me, it's credit for everyone in this room, people online, and people who are not here who've really made this project work. And what we're here today is to really explain all the learning, all the methodologies, all the approaches that we've done with private sector engagement and with blended finance approaches. There's a lot to learn from here. And what I always tell people is that, you know, they describe CATALYZE as this blended finance mechanism or a contract, and I say, no. It's CATALYZE at its very core is a learning contract, and we are here to learn. And this is why I emphasized, and Amanda's emphasized, and everyone on the USAID and Palladium teams have really emphasized we need to learn what we do, because what's happening in Sri Lanka affects what happens in Peru. What we can do in South Africa works in Indonesia, you know, and so this is why it's so critically important that we all come together. So over the past year or so, we've been conducting what we've been calling kind of these satellite or mini learning events. These are the individual CATALYZE projects that have been working towards and learning from each other in their kind of own little bubble there. And now we're going to bring all those lessons together, because what the main theme of this conference really is if we think about kind of as a global level and leveraging all these different lessons and making all these connections that normally would not be made, from education to maternal child health, to agriculture, all across the spectrum. We work in every sector in every part of the globe. It's incredibly important that we bring all those global lessons together, but we bring it together in a local context. And you're going to hear a lot of local actors here and a lot of local stakeholders that bring that together from a global partnership perspective and a global place, working with local actors. I personally think that's the best way to do this. I also personally think that cross-sectoral is the future of USAID, and being able to bring all these different lessons around private sector engagement is critically important to our mission and to development and meeting the biggest development challenges that we have. So we have an action-packed agenda today. It's going to be really, really nice, and just remember is that we're in the middle here, and this is a continuum. So this is always a journey, and we should all take these lessons and think about how these lessons can apply to our own work, how we can make things better, and do more than the sum of our parts. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Regina to take us through the agenda here, and then we'll continue with the day. So welcome, everyone, and thank you all for being here.
All right, thank you, Steve. I would like to take a minute to review a couple additional logistics for today for you all to be aware of. The agenda, in addition to being out front, is also available on the learning site. You can snap the QR code that you see here on the screen to be able to access that and see in greater detail. At the end of our event, we will have a networking hour downstairs. We'll give you some further instructions about that in a little bit. And we do want to encourage and ask virtual participants to make their own arrangements to connect virtually as well. There is a section on the Learning Events site under the Attendees tab that both virtual and in-person participants can use to better connect with one another. For our in-person participants, restrooms, if you haven't found those already, are out on either side of the elevator bay, out these main doors. The Wi-Fi information is also on the Know Before You Go part of the Learning Events site, so you can access that through the QR code as well. And just a reminder, please do remember to silence your cell phones if you haven't done that already. We also want to express a special thank you to Counterpart International for the use of this space today. At this time, I would like to invite to the podium Bernadette Howlett, the Managing Director of Global Growth Platforms at Palladium, to introduce Catalyze. Bernadette.
Good morning, everybody in the room, and good morning to those of you who are online. Welcome. Welcome to the first global learning event for the USAID CATALYZE mechanism. My name is Bernadette Howlett, as you've just heard, and you probably hear the Australian accent. Don't hold that against me. As well, I'd like you to know that as the Managing Director for Global Platforms, my whole remit is, as I say, global, but it's to also make sure that we mobilise capital and to bring to scale programs that can drive positive impact around the world. In 2021, at Palladium, we mobilised 700 million in capital. In 2022, we mobilised almost in excess of 3 times that amount, 2 billion worldwide. 500 million of that was through our partnerships with public organisations, and 1.5 billion of that was with private organisations. It's proof that mobilising capital from the private sector to social impact is most certainly possible, and it's working. Our ambition is to mobilise over 5 billion in the next 3 years. As a global team, we work hard to bridge impact opportunity with the necessary capital to progress their outcomes. We believe we all need to make saving the world an investable opportunity. We work to forge coalitions of private and public sector entities, including United Nations entities, non-government organisations, together with our team within Palladium. We believe we have become excellent at making impact investable, finding investors, structuring relationships, and guaranteeing impact for right happening on the ground. That's what we mean when we are talking about catalysing investment. In 2020, we signed up to the United Nations Global Impact. The 17 global goals are embedded in every one of our projects. No matter where we're working or what the nature of the project is, we're tackling these critical development outcomes. We support and share with you the quest for innovation in capital mobilisation. For example, Palladium runs the product platform for the Mobilis product for FCDO, where the UK government facilitates and invests in the listing on a stock exchange of emerging market propositions. We also designed the Energy Entrepreneurship Growth Fund, a fund aimed to provide capital to energy entrepreneurs in Africa, which we subsequently helped to capitalise to over 100 million in a blended finance structure. Catalyze represents a unique opportunity for USAID and its private investor stakeholders to innovate and push new boundaries in international development. While the US government has been a clear leader in supporting subjects as wide-ranging as private sector engagement, education, inclusive finance, investment promotion, agricultural development for food security, water, health sanitation, and prevention of climate change for many decades, Catalyze allows USAID to bring these factors together under one mechanism, using the unifying banner of innovation in blended finance as the glue. For us, blended finance is the strategic use of public resources to mobilise private capital to meet development objectives. There is now clear recognition that the Sustainable Development Goals are unachievable without significant private sector co-investment, and the development solutions are multi-actor, not one-actor solutions. A key strategy we use at Catalyze to achieve the SDGs is building partnerships and alliances, led mostly by private sector actors who are committed to achieving development results. We also use these multi-sector alliances to catalyse and help Catalyze as an entree to help us organise and deliver technical assistance and financing at greater scale to the many hundreds of thousands of people who need these services to live better lives, to receive better education, insurance and prices for their agricultural goods. Building these alliances and then structuring the financial platforms that rely on subawards to bring these to life does take time, but these solutions deliver wonderfully once they're set up. In Palladium and in USAID, we see Catalyze as a great learning lab. The lessons we learn from Catalyze activities are already finding their ways into design in new programming, not just for USAID, but for the UK government and even with the Australian government and other major donors and corporations in the development space. We are constantly being asked by major donors and corporations, how did you build these multi-sector partnerships? How do you put in place the right mixes of incentives through pay-for-results subawards so that to accelerate the pace of impact? We have found in recent years that there is genuine and increasing interest across the donor and multinational space to modify development solutions to accelerate impact based on what works. If we have learnt anything over the past 3 years on Catalyze, it is that these strategies, when tailored to local context, clearly work to deliver financing and assistance at greater scale to underserved communities in dozens of countries and sectors across the globe. What's also interesting about Catalyze's design, which actually turns traditional development on its head, is the fact that it starts with resources and ideas of impact, and then design begins. This structure is a fantastic way to encourage local involvement in defining development solutions. Because with its upfront commitment, we have the time and mandate to involve local stakeholders in how to make the best use of US government resources to reduce risk, to find capital mobilisation solutions, and to find where technical assistance to entrepreneurs, schools and childcare centres can have the most development impact. In Palladium, we deliver behind our entire company, and it is at a level where we want to support you and others to achieve positive impact. You will hear today how Catalyst's design process and overall structures allow us to achieve significant scalable results and co-create programming with local actors, pivoting as needed in real time. Since all of Catalyst's work is based on local markets and market actors seeking to grow responsibly, when a blended finance solution works, we have the confidence that the structure and the relationships will continue to deliver impact for years to come following the government's involvement. As was mentioned by Steve, we're in the 4th of an 8-year project. While we're confident in the results to date, we recognise there is still a lot to learn, and there's a lot that we can do with the time left to achieve the promise of Catalyze. So as I conclude today, I hope sincerely that during these next few hours you take advantage of this forum and to help us design new programs, to help us to define approaches that can achieve even further impact. And may I also add to that, there is much to gain by listening, and listening to others, engaging with people that you may not otherwise have had the opportunity to speak to. So I welcome and am thrilled at the possibility of listening and join you in asking that you seek the opportunity to hear from others directly. So with that final remark, I'm going to hand over to Michael Metzler, the Executive Director of the Private Sector Engagement Hub at USAID.
I love that picture every time. Good morning, everybody. Really excited to be here. Like Bernadette, I also come with a bit of an accent. It's not as cool as an Australian accent. It's from Philadelphia, so please, like her, do not hold that against me. I also have the honor of being Steve's boss, so as he takes credit from all the great work you all are doing, I just take credit from Steve and move on. I couldn't be happier to be here at this point. As Steve pointed out, Catalyze is a learning mechanism at its heart. I have long experience within USAID on blended finance projects, used to run the DCA program, now run the PSE Hub. And so I believe very, very, very deeply in the work that Catalyze is doing. And I think for the future of development, which I've told the administrator over and over again, it's just the beginning. And so what we're trying to do in the Hub is a bit different than what predecessor offices have done in the past, which is we're really taking a look at the systems of the agency to make this work easier, faster, more cost-effective, so we can truly scale it across the USAID platform, which has a direct connection with what's happening today, because as you generate the content of the learning, which is so critical, it's our responsibility to make it available and accessible globally to all our missions, right? Too often in the past, we've seen great projects that ended when the project ended, and the learnings ended where at kind of the river's edge there. And so we're spending a lot of time within the Hub to figure out how do we fundamentally change the systems of the agency so that, as Steve was saying earlier, something that happens in Sri Lanka can be instantly picked up in Colombia because it's relevant, it works, it has great impact, and it can be done in that market and in that place. So so I'm really excited about what's the content today, and our pledge to you all as you think about these learnings and generate these learnings. It's our job to make it available worldwide, because we have to get to scale, we have to continuously replicate this stuff, and to replicate it, we have to make it available and accessible. And so very excited to learn what's going on. I'm actually very excited to go below the surface, Bernadette. You mentioned the meta-level accomplishments of Catalyze so far, which I talk about all the time. I don't often get the chance to see at the project level what's going on, so very excited to learn as we go throughout the day. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bernadette and Michael. At this time, we will share more about Catalyze as a global blended finance platform for localized solutions. I would like to invite up Amanda Greavy, Deputy Chief of Party for Catalyze. Amanda.
Good morning. I'm Amanda Greavy. I'm the Catalyze Deputy Chief of Party, and we are delighted to have all of you here today for our Catalyze Learning event. I'm going to kick us off with a high-level overview of Catalyze and what we do, and some results and learnings from the work that we've done over the past few years. Oops. Okay. So Catalyze is funded by 23 USAID missions and is working across 4 continents to test and implement really adaptable methods that work through local partners and solutions to mobilize private capital for really diverse development goals across a broad range of sectors, including agriculture, education, WASH, workforce development, and many others. Catalyze is truly global. We're working across 29 countries through effectively 9 buckets of programming. These programs are diverse geographically and also in terms of their goals. Catalyze activities are supporting everything from small and medium enterprise growth in the Western Balkans to food security and resilience in Niger and Burkina Faso, to improving and sustaining learning outcomes for children and youth in countries in Africa and Latin America, all through capital mobilization. In each of these activities, really the common thread is that we're co-designing localized solutions and platforms to engage the private sector, and we're leveraging blended finance to scale private sector solutions to development challenges. So how do Catalyze programs achieve these results? Regardless of the sector, location, or the state of development of the country that we're working in, Catalyze essentially offers a blended finance platform that provides 3 main types of services. The first are pay-for-results incentives to stimulate both services and the supply of finance, including results-based contracts with transaction advisors or business advisors, we often use those terms interchangeably, who are packaging and facilitating deals on behalf of enterprises seeking financing. Also, performance-based grants to financial institutions to motivate expansion of lending in the sectors that we're focused on. Throughout today's learning event, you're going to be hearing a lot about these pay-for-results incentives, and you might be wondering why we focus so much on these. Really, the answer to that question is twofold. First, we found that these tools are really powerful in achieving results. And second, it's because we really want the work and the relationships that we've established under Catalyze to continue well after we leave. By using these incentives, it's really the opposite of arm-twisting results from local partners. We can motivate actors to try new ways of doing business. And because we're really zeroing in on where there are market opportunities, it's the most likely way for sustainable development solutions that are led by local actors, really regardless of the country, the sector, or the target population. So in addition to pay-for-results incentives, we also offer assistance for risk mitigation, including strategic partnerships with actors that can unlock impact at scale. And then lastly, Catalyze provides technical assistance for service provision, including things like financial product development, financial institution training to engage in sectors that may be viewed as higher risk, and technical assistance for sector strengthening, such as training for education and childcare quality. So that's a bit about what we do, and this is what we've achieved to date. So to date, Catalyze has mobilized $223 million in private capital for over 19,000 firms, associations, cooperatives, and schools. Really with a steady ramp up in financing in recent months, as you can see on this slide here. That ramp up is really reflective of the types of localized mechanisms that we use on Catalyze that take a little bit of time to get going before they're really off to the races. So we expect that trend line to continue to go up over the next few months and years. Notably, 3/4 of the businesses that have received financing through Catalyze are owned by women. Catalyze has achieved this by intentionally designing activities that focus, and strategies as well, that focus specifically on women. We've learned that proactive design is really key for reaching women and addressing their unique needs and challenges in accessing finance. A gender-neutral approach is just less likely to achieve scale in reaching a significant number of women-led firms. So what tools are working best to achieve these results? First and foremost, again, our local partners on pay-for-results agreements. Across the globe, we have 130 intermediaries and 32 financial institutions on pay-for-results, subcontracts, and grants that have effectively turned $3.3 million in funding from USAID into $212 million in finance for businesses. Initially, we saw the quickest results from our transaction advisors, again, who are identifying and packaging and facilitating deals. But now we're seeing that our financial institutions who are on pay-for-results incentives are really driving the most financing. They are now responsible for 56% of the total capital mobilized through Catalyze to date and counting. We expect that to continue to increase. We've also found that pay-for-results incentives improve the efficacy of training and technical assistance. So for example, when we complement training to financial institutions on how to lend to a specific sector that they may have less experience with these results-based incentives, it gives financial institutions the breathing room and reduces their risk to introduce new financial products or test new lending methodologies. So when technical assistance is provided alone, it's just not as effective in creating that behavior change. Other tools that have been highly effective in unlocking financing, especially for women, are digital solutions, factoring, crowdfunding, algorithm-based lending systems that take the bias out of lending. And you'll be hearing a bit more about those from my colleagues shortly. Catalyze has also had a lot of success in unlocking debt financing. As you can see here, 95% of the financing we've mobilized to date has been in the form of debt. And really, that's not a bad thing. That's reflective of the financing needs of the populations that we're working with on Catalyze. But scaling access to growth capital is also, of course, important, especially in markets where access to equity is severely constrained. So Catalyze has provided grants to private equity funds to increase access to alternative forms of investment. This is an approach you hear a lot about in the development community today, and there is great potential upside to that approach. But I also think it's important to note that creating new investment vehicles and funds takes time, and it requires a higher risk tolerance. Not all of these mechanisms will ultimately pan out. So we've learned that what is more sure, at least, and what's faster is really this tried and true methodology of expansion of existing lenders on the supply side and supporting demand for finance by incentivizing intermediaries. I think, though, what we've found is that across the board, these tools work. Really, it's how we use these tools that needs to be aligned with the state of play in an economy where we're working and the level of development of the focus sector that we're looking at. So when a sector is generally developed, these pay-for-results incentives and technical support work really fantastically to unlock capital. In a sector that's less developed for absorbing private capital, it's important to first provide support to structure the supply chain so that it's prepared to access finance, or even open the aperture of private capital to include other sources of funding like grants and donations from private foundations, as we've done on several Catalyze activities. That really increases our flexibility to work in sectors like social protection and education and childcare. Another important result to share is the number of entities that we've assisted. To date, Catalyze has supported over 30,000 businesses through financing and technical assistance, including firms, schools, and cooperatives. In several of our technical assistance-heavy activities, we're achieving really great scale in reaching individuals by working with non-traditional business service providers. In our education portfolio, where we have a dual mandate of supporting education quality and education finance, we're implementing through nonprofits on results-based contracts and fixed award grants. Through this model and through support that we've provided to over 500 schools, we've reached over 151,000 learners. In Ethiopia, the Market Systems for Growth activity has hired civil society entities to serve essentially as business service providers and put them on results-based contracts for workforce development. Through this approach on MS4G, Catalyze has placed nearly 20,000 people in jobs, over 60% of which are women. So what's becoming increasingly clear, I think, as we take stock of what we've learned over the past few years, is that in our really technical assistance-heavy activities, results-based contracting to civil society is the model that's working the most and that we're using the most. But when large-scale capital mobilization is the goal, it's really pay-for-results mechanisms and relationships with local entities that are facilitating and providing finance that's truly coming in big. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Next, we'll present a series of lightning talks that highlight the Catalyze model to mobilize private capital in different contexts. To introduce our first topic, localizing pay for results, we will show a short video clip where you will hear from the Director General of a microfinance institution in Niger, who will discuss how the pay for results incentives positively impacted the financial institution's ability to do business.
Le partenariat avec Catalyze m'a aidé et l'aide en tant que telle que je peux dire, c'est par rapport à l'incitatif. Parce qu'à notre niveau, effectivement, on a eu à faire une première phase et on a bénéficié d'un incitatif important. Et cet incitatif-là, ça nous avait effectivement permis de lever de la ressource. Ça, c'est quand même un facteur important. Parce qu'avec l'incitatif qu'on a reçu, on a pu lever au moins 200 millions d'emprunts. Et pourquoi on a levé cet emprunt? C'est parce que c'est comme si on voit que le taux important bancaire a été subventionné. Si on dit incitatif, il faut savoir aussi l'utiliser en bon escient. Il ne s'agit pas tout simplement de se dire que c'est de la ressource qu'on a gagnée comme ça, qu'on devrait utiliser n'importe comment. Donc nous, on a vu à l'incitatif une ressource qui atténue le taux d'intérêt bancaire que nous supportons cher. Donc je me dis que ça, c'est un exploit important et que si ça continue, effectivement, ça va beaucoup plus nous encourager à aller vers les partenaires financiers, les établissements financiers. Et on n'aura plus peur maintenant des taux d'intérêt et puis du coût élevé du crédit.
And at this time, I would like to introduce Ayobami Egunyomi and Julia Uriarte, who will share further on localizing pay for results.
Thank you, Regina. Hi, everyone. I'm Ayobami, and with me here is Julia. Julia and I will be presenting on the flexibility that the pay-for-result approach offers that has allowed our buy-ins to quickly adapt and pivot in different contexts to achieve results. Our key message to you here is that just because a country is in distress doesn't mean one can't work on financing solutions. It's in fact when creative financing solutions are most needed, and Catalyze has found the right mix in the Sahel and Sri Lanka to achieve these results. As some of you may know, there is an humanitarian crisis in the Sahel. Catalyze is working on an activity in Burkina Faso and Niger towards mobilizing capital for resilience and food security outcomes. Both countries are facing deteriorating security situations caused by armed conflict and political instability. As a result, we're seeing a lot of financial institutions close down branches. To address this, Catalyze is working with individual financial facilitators who are agile and are able to go into these areas where banks have closed down and are able to connect clients to banks. To allow these financial facilitators do their work, Catalyze has modified their contract in two ways. First, we're providing incentives based on the security or the risk of security in these areas they work. And secondly, because these financial facilitators are individual consultants, we're providing a fixed amount to cater towards their start of business operating cost. In addition to the security situation in the Sahel, there is also acute food insecurity. One of the factors contributing to this food insecurity in the Sahel is climate change, which has led to drought and famines. As a result, the financial institutions consider investing in the ag sector as risky. To motivate financial institutions to invest in the ag sector and to work with Catalyze target actors, we're providing incentives. Something we've learned is that incentives majorly address the issue of motivation. But in Niger, where financial institutions also have less financial resources and there is a liquidity crisis in Niger, we've been able to provide a mix of advance and capital injection to ensure that these financial institutions are able to meet the needs. As you must have heard from the video from one of Catalyze microfinance institution partners in Niger, these MFIs in Niger have been able to use these incentives to get refinancing from commercial banks. As a result, they're able to meet the loan demands of Catalyze target actors. At this point, I will hand it over to Julia, who will talk more about the operating context in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Ayo. Welcome. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Julia Uriarte, and I am the manager for the Sri Lanka buy-in under Catalyze. So a major component of our initial program design focused on increasing new debt financing to small businesses. And like the Sahel program, it focused on using pay-for-results incentives to incentivize financial facilitators to help businesses achieve this financing. However, in 2022, there were some changes to the operating context that made new debt financing a strategy that would no longer work to support our target firms. In 2022, Sri Lanka faced the worst economic crisis since its independence. High inflation led to food, fuel, and import shortages, which spiraled into political and social unrest. This picture here is from a pool party that happened at the presidential palace after he fled the country and subsequently resigned. Just an example of some of the unrest that took place during that time. Businesses across all sectors and of all sizes were affected, suffering from reduced revenues and increased operating costs. Impact on the financial sector was equally severe. Our team met with banking partners very early on in the crisis to understand its effects and learned that new lending, especially to the small businesses that we supported, which were already seen as risky, was essentially off the table. Loan officers were worried about they would soon be facing high levels of default on existing loans, and they spoke about the need to manage risk of their current portfolios before they could even begin to think about taking on risk by issuing additional new loans. Luckily, we had Pay for Results in our back pockets, a tool that was flexible and we could use to pivot and adjust our initial approach to meet the needs of businesses and banking partners under this new context. I'll get into that a little bit later before I hand it off to Ao. Right before I do, I want to quickly point out that as we talk about localizing for development here and in the next several sessions, we localize our approaches, but that also means working with local actors, all of whom are affected by the context that we work in and these very, very difficult issues, whether that's increased cost of living, going into very dangerous operating environments. And so with Catalyze, as we've adjusted our results or our approaches, I want to shout out USAID and the Palladium team for recognizing that we also need to adjust how we treat our staff and our partners and make it so that they can do their jobs through these approaches. And with that, I'll hand it over to Io to talk about how the approaches have led to results.
Thank you, Julia. So similar to what Julia said about the role of financial facilitators in Sri Lanka, in Sahel, we've seen great results working with financial facilitators. They connect our target actors who are banked to banks. But also beyond facilitating loan application, they also ensure loan repayment. One of the feedback we got from one of our partner financial institutions in Burkina Faso is that we trust working with Catalyze financial facilitators because we know that they would support clients throughout the loan life cycle. Another factor that has contributed to success in adapting Pay for Results is effectively layering with other USAID projects. Catalyze is part of the USAID Resilience in the Sahel Enhanced 2 initiative in the Sahel. And so what we do is to collaborate with other USAID projects who provide technical assistance and also serve as a source of pipeline to Catalyze in the Sahel. For instance, in Burkina Faso and Niger, we're working with USAID Yalo and Yigiri, which are both market systems project. And what does market systems project do? Provide technical assistance to producer unions and cooperatives. Also working with USAID Youth Connect, where this project provides technical trainings to youth. As a result, we're working with target actors that are ready to fully repay their loans at the end. Often in difficult operating contexts, women and youth are mostly impacted. Catalyze Sahel has found a creative way to ensure that underserved women and youth have access to finance. We provide additional incentive to financial facilitators who work with women and youth, but also for our partner financial institutions, we require them that at least 50% of their capital mobilization target must be towards women and youth. We've learned that women and youth often demand for smaller loan sizes, which may be below the financial institution threshold for minimum loan amount. And what the financial institution has done is to reorganize these women and youth into solidarity groups to make sure that by reorganizing them into groups, they're able to meet this minimum loan amount, ensuring that the loan demands of women and youth are met. Through this creative financing solution, Catalyze has seen great results. To date in the Sahel, we've supported over 650 women-owned enterprises, mobilizing over 2.6 million to women in the Sahel. We've also supported over 200 youth-owned enterprises, mobilizing over 1.1 million for youth. With this, I'll hand it back to Julia, who will talk about how Catalyze Sri Lanka has been able to pivot their pay-for-results approach in response to the Sri Lankan economic crisis. Julia?
Thank you. So in response to the crisis, our team launched a pilot program that used pay for results to facilitate restructuring of existing loans rather than obtaining new financing. And we could not have been more pleased with the results. From our single pilot contract, we supported $1.75 million in restructured financing. In terms of value for money, that was approximately $701 in financing for every dollar spent by Catalyze, which we think is pretty good results. I'd like to briefly highlight one of the businesses that we supported under this program. Tourism was one of the hardest hit sectors during COVID and then the subsequent economic crisis. And Amagi Aria Hotel, a boutique hotel outside of Colombo, was no exception. They suffered from reduced occupancy rates and damage during the civil unrest. They were under a loan moratorium for $1.2 million in long-term loans, so they did not have to make any payments, one of the reasons they were able to survive during the crisis. However, they were still accruing interest, meaning it was an unsustainable strategy. With the help of our facilitator, he spoke with the owner, talked with him, and convinced him to begin repaying the loan under a restructured payment system beginning in December rather than extend for an additional 4 months. As part of the restructured negotiations with the bank, we were able to negotiate a rebate of about $56,000 on interest paid and get him more manageable, smaller monthly payments moving forward. For Amagi, this means increased cash flow to support their continued operations, and the bank is benefiting from getting payments sooner rather than later. And of course, reduced risk of default benefits all parties, most importantly, the 110 employees of this hotel who would certainly be under or unemployed as a result of a default on the loan. We've since scaled up this debt restructuring support. We now have 7 facilitators engaged under pay-for-result contracts to provide restructuring support and estimate that they may be able to support as many as 120 businesses to restructure their debt, about 30% of which may be women-owned or led. So you've heard today from Io and I just 2 examples of the many under Catalyze of how we localize pay for results. You'll hear more from Western Balkans to Ethiopia on how we can use this method to achieve impact and positive outcomes in really challenging environments. So I encourage you to enjoy, listen to the remaining presentations. There will be networking after if you want more details from either of us, any of the other activities. And I, for one, can't wait to see how much more positive impact we'll be able to achieve through the end of the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Io and Julia. To introduce our next topic on unlocking opportunities for women, we will show a short video of a business consultant discussing how women in general have less access to market information and alternative approaches to financing, as well as how to improve communications with women-owned small and medium enterprises.
Da žene općenito imaju manje informacija o tome šta je na tržištu kapitala, imaju manje informacija šta se sve može smatrati pristupom finansiranju. Bilo neophodno obezbijediti praktično protok informacija do žena poduzetnica na koji način mogu doći do finansiranja. Ono što sam primijetila u svom radu i u čemu žene najviše mogu iskoristiti pomoć nas, poslovnih savjetnika je, osim tog pristupa informiranju i praktično približavanje kreditiranja kao načina ili nekog drugog finansiranja kao načina rasta u
And at this time, I would like to introduce Christine Loftus and then Mila Markovich, who will be joining us virtually, who will share further on unlocking opportunities for women.
Good morning, everyone. As many in this room are aware, women entrepreneurs globally confront a $1.5 trillion financing gap. There are millions of women entrepreneurs who are unable to access the capital they need to manage their businesses, buy inventory, and invest in their business's growth, buying new machinery, opening new properties. As a result, they're unable to increase revenues, therefore earning less money for their families, money they cannot invest in things like education, money they cannot invest in their communities, and they're unable to hire more employees. And research shows that women are more likely to hire other women, so financing women, therefore, would also bring more women into the workforce. So why can't women entrepreneurs often access capital? The challenges impeding access to capital for women entrepreneurs are multifaceted. On the supply side, many banks in particular require hard collateral or property. And customs, inheritance laws, and other structural barriers make it very hard for women to access property. They only own a small fraction of property globally. Added to that, there's often unconscious biases in banks and other financial institutions. They approach women-led enterprises differently, assess them differently, and that ultimately impacts both whether or not they provide a loan, but also the terms attached to the loan. On the demand side, we also see many, many challenges. Women entrepreneurs often lack things like formal business records, a business plan, or audited financials. At the same time, there's often mistrust. Women entrepreneurs tell us globally things like, banks aren't for me, they're not going to serve me. And as a result, they create a barrier where they don't go to banks and look to access financing or other financial institutions. But given the development impacts of not financing women-owned enterprises, we, as the Catalyze team, have asked ourselves, how do we mobilize capital for women entrepreneurs? And how can we make sure that women have equitable access to the resources they need to grow their businesses? Next slide. So the Catalyze program has identified 3 core intervention points that we work on across our many different programs. At a global level, we work to inject capital into financial institutions that are serving women. And there are plenty of financial institutions that are serving women well, but in some cases, microfinance institutions, fintechs, they can't access the capital they need and at the terms they need to provide affordable financing. At the same time, we also see that many financial institutions largely use traditional products, requiring things like property and hard collateral that are simply inaccessible. At the same time, there are countless other methods of loan underwriting that take out some of those structural barriers that impede access for women, things like algorithm-based financing, psychographic-based financing, and other resources that can be introduced and can unlock capital for women. And lastly, we can overcome some of those barriers, those gaps around trust, by working with business and consultants and incentivizing business consultants to make that linkage between the woman entrepreneur and the financial institution to overcome lack of trust and other barriers that may impede access to financing. So today I'd like us to start at the global level and talk about our work injecting capital into financial institutions. The Catalyze program has worked very closely with Lend-A-Hand, a Dutch crowdfunding platform, to upgrade their back-end technology to allow them to automate due diligence and introduce new algorithms that take some of the bias out and make opportunities to access financing more accessible for women on their platforms. And these changes, which took about 6 months to operationalize, have had a big impact. In about 9 months since they started dispersing capital thanks to these upgrades, they've mobilized more than $20 million in financing for women-owned entrepreneurs globally, largely by crowdfunding for financial institutions that already have the infrastructure in place to finance women-owned enterprises. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Mila Markovich, who will speak a bit about her work in the Western Balkans to mobilize capital for women through work with banks as well as business consultants.
Thank you, Christine. Happy to be here, and happy to be here as a representative of the Western Balkans EUG activity. So the Western Balkans financial market is bankocentric. Within 6 countries, there are 0 or just a few alternative finance products. Within this frame, there is an imperative to try to work on both the demand and the supply side in order to help SMEs, particularly women SMEs, in their access to finance. The banks are rigid about changing procedures or targets. So EOG's model is to find a local partner, a financial intermediary, with a good understanding of the local financial market and the woman SME's needs. He works with local banks, helping them to understand that there is a huge gap between what they are targeting and potential clients. He's working on defining improved financial products for women SMEs. These products are with lower costs in regard to collateral or administrative fees, more efficient in procedures, faster and easier, and include social benefits for women. Some of our major lessons learned are engage a local partner with already established relations to at least one local bank for a good spillover effect in a small local market. There is no one-size-fits-all solution for the region. Each country has its own regulatory frame and specificities of the financial markets players' behavior. Negotiate with the banks by giving them the opportunity to save their costs and time, particularly for the risk assessment. So our model provides the opportunity to have scalable fintech solution for the new clients. In our case, that is Lotus Plus platform, officially launched and easy to access. And last but not least, promotion of the success stories and external collaboration with different stakeholders in the ecosystem is crucial. Next slide, please. So if I may say, on the other side, let's say demand side, we are working on building the regional network of the business service providers. Opposite large companies, SMEs, particularly women SMEs, are not able or not well informed to have a financial manager. This is crucial for women-owned companies, having someone who will help them to understand how to invest, how to find financial sources in general, which are right steps for further business decisions. The business service providers bridge the gap between supply and demand side and invoke systematic changes in an underdeveloped and narrow financial landscape. Most of the surveyed beneficiaries reported they will not be able to have adequate access to finance without working with our partners. Pay-for-result incentive model ensures that the results are obtained, financing accessed, rather than input. What is very important to be mentioned that we are motivating partners to work with women SMEs using some lessons learned to date. So first of all, we are helping them to understand the woman's role in the business, how they are involved in everyday decision-making processes, and how to recognize them. Second, we are providing additional financial incentives for all women SMEs results for all partners, because they are smaller, hidden, they are about 25% in the old economy. However, the good side is that many research papers show that women SMEs are more ready to learn and absorb new skills. And finally, female business service providers are more sensitive when it comes to women SMEs approach. And they are needed to be supported as well in the market. So the EOG's partner network is almost half of the female. Next slide, please. If I have a few minutes more of your time, just to present what is the practical impact of the model that we are talking about. Here is one nice lady from Albania, from Timak, a woman-owned manage and control company, working in male traditional sector, manufacturing industry, specializing in refurbishing vehicles such as ambulances. However, late payment collection and the COVID-19 pandemic negatively impacted her working capital. After being denied loans by 3 local banks, Timak was connected to a CATALYZE EOG business service provider and finally received a non-collateralized loan. The vital working capital allowed TMAC to maintain operations and keep employing more staff. The company's success in delivering high-quality vehicles at an affordable price even led to them winning the UN tender to supply ambulances to Ukraine. In general, for the end, I would like to share 3 main lessons learned from the EOG team. First of all, women SMEs often need technical assistance before financial transaction, access to market, knowledge, or access to technology in order to become ready for financing. Second, strong and continuous focus on specificities of the women SMEs is needed, and the EOG is trying to address them all the time. And third one, women SMEs lack networking and collaboration, and EOG is trying to fulfill this gap. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mila. And Mila's story, the story of Arjet, encapsulates the importance of mobilizing capital for women to enable them to drive inclusive growth in their communities and drive improved outcomes both in Ukraine and other markets across the world. And as Amanda mentioned earlier today, that requires intentionality. So we encourage everyone in this room, as they design programs focused on mobilizing capital, particularly for women, to think about what are the needs of women in the communities and how can we make sure that it rises to the forefront in program design from day one to ensure equitable outcomes.
Thank you, Mila and Christy. For our final lightning topic on financing education, we'll start with a short video that describes a learning event that EduFinance hosted, along with USAID field missions and partners in Nairobi. The EduFinance partner, Opportunity International, highlighted a low-fee private school owner that through CATALYZE learned ways to invest in education.
I've really enjoyed the presentation so far. I realize we all are taking kind of different angles in how we're integrating information. So I'm actually going to do something a little bit different and start by telling us a story and really focusing on the opportunity of what we understand we're here. I'm going to tell you the story of Patient, because Patient is the story of the low-fee private school sector. Patient started College Adora in Bukavu, DRC in 2004. He started his school with just 4 primary classes and 49 students. When he speaks about the founding of the school, he talks about the ways in which it was difficult in the beginning, the ways in which he couldn't even pay himself a salary, but he's always been primarily committed to delivering quality education. And now, through CATALYZE EduFinance, he's committed to learning more ways to improve and invest in quality education. And so what you can see here is the delta between when he started in 2004, just 49 primary school students, 4 teachers, and in 2020, he's reporting 900 in enrollment all the way from pre-primary to secondary. So again, we see that growth and how schools begin to accommodate their learners. He reports that there's 96 orphans and vulnerable children included in his school. So again, when we think about equity, we think about this story. Employs 42 teachers and offers 23 classes. So the growth is significant. And he proudly reports that last semester, more than half of the best performing students in class were girls. So again, trying to sell you the case that I know you already have bought into, but imagine what school leaders like Patient can do for education with more access to capital and training.
At this time, I would like to introduce Michael Tettleman and welcome back Christine Loftus, who will share further on financing education.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present on financing education as part of CATALYZE. My name is Mike Tettleman, and I'm the Education Portfolio Lead for CATALYZE with Palladium. The overriding objective of the financing education work that we do in CATALYZE is to support learners' access to affordable and quality education, particularly in the non-state education sector, and we use blended finance as the vehicle to do this. Education finance was actually the first program in the CATALYZE portfolio. we launched it via a whole series of co-creation and co-design programs across sub-Saharan Africa, and have since expanded this to the Latin America and Caribbean region, Middle East, and Asia. And our programs are built around a pay-for-results approach. Why are we focusing on financing education? First, we know there are strong social and economic returns to schooling. And we know that strides have been made in improving access to quality education, and yet the scale and the magnitude of children's lack of access to quality education is unfortunately growing, and the urgency is acute. Yes, governments have been prioritizing education in their agendas and expanding their education budgets where they can, but education remains severely underfunded in many developing regions, and hence the need for blended finance solutions. So what are we doing to address these financing and education access and quality gaps? We're using blended finance as the vehicle to strengthen the education sector at all levels, from early childhood development, primary, all the way through tertiary education. And we work in fragile and post-conflict contexts as well as middle-income countries as well. And we're providing access to finance for schools and parents, such as how would Carrie and Opportunity International mentioned just now, through school improvement loans and loans to parents for affordable school fees. In the process, we are looking to make the case for investment in non-state education through piloting new models. We're working with a range of local and implementing partners to test out these models and to see what can be taken to scale and what can be self-sustaining. It's important to note that education finance is relatively new compared to other blended finance sectors, and deploying these models helps us learn and test out and build an evidence base for this sector. We're using several key approaches here, particularly around private capital mobilization and working with private equity and private financial institutions such as commercial banks, private investors, and foundations. Also, as our commitment to learning and increasing access to quality in education, all investments have to achieve measurable education outcomes. All our projects focus on low and low middle income populations, and each activity we do, we work very hard to align it with host country government priorities. And as our commitment to building the evidence base and making the case for investment in non-state education, we disseminate our learnings, for example, through a community of practice called the Education Finance Network, as well as through learning briefs, articles, conferences. Now I'm delighted to turn it over to Christy, who will talk about our work in early childhood care and education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The foundations of success in primary school, secondary school, and beyond start in the first year, if not before, of a child's life. So the CATALYZE program is working to cultivate a portfolio of investments focused on expanding access to high-quality early childhood care and education. And the importance of early childhood care and education cannot be understated. There is ample evidence that it can drives improved learning outcomes. Yet 593 million children globally do not attend any type of structured early childhood care and education. At the same time, early childhood care and education is directly tied to women's ability to engage in the workforce and indeed women's well-being. Globally, 606 million women are unable to engage in the formal labor force, in part because they cannot access childcare and their time is spent on these responsibilities. So the CATALYZE team has questioned, how do we expand access to high-quality early childhood care and education? And we're looking to structure a series of multi-stakeholder investments and drive innovation to achieve what we're considering the triple dividend of development outcomes. We're hoping to drive improved learning outcomes among children, increase economic opportunities for women, and enhance workforce development in the ECCE sector. By expanding access to early childhood care and education, we are inherently creating more opportunities, and in a sector that is currently dominated by women, more opportunities for women to join the workforce. So we're still in the early stages and starting out in India, Honduras, and Paraguay, but we're looking forward to expanding into new markets to drive the benefits and reduce the number of children who are outside of the formal education system. Back over to you, Mike.
Well, I'd first like to just mention some of our education portfolio successes and impact that we're very proud of with our partners. For example, in South Africa, already over $4 million has been committed by the private sector investors to building the early childhood development space. Over 150,000 learners have been reached in over 500 schools through interventions. And as part, again, of our commitment to really focusing on improving education outcomes, we're starting critical assessments to measure the impact of the technical assistance approaches to improving these learning and education outcomes. I'd just like to touch on a few learnings to date as well. First, we are and should leverage the substantial and diverse range of capital and blended finance solution in the education sectors. There's a tremendous amount of energy and innovation, expertise, and capital in the education finance space. We are learning and adapting as we're finding that different types and mixtures of capital is required to effectively reach different constituents and communities and populations. For example, purely commercial financing is often the best fit for middle-income environments often, while models that mix concessional and commercial capital allow greater reach to lower-income communities, and concessionary financing is required often for the most vulnerable communities and learners. Second, we're finding, no surprise probably to you all, that it takes considerable planning to ensure that the right type of capital is deployed in the way to generate optimal impact. As an example, school fee loans and loans from financial institutions to riskier schools is essential and very challenging. These financial institutions, banks, have to be adequately incentivized to invest in low-fee schools. And the range of school fees differs significantly, as well as the bankability of these schools and the risk level, which requires an incentive package that adequately addresses the risk. We're also finding, again, probably not surprising to you all, that most impact-focused investors from developed countries are typically not familiar with the role and the potential of non-state education in developing countries. And so we spend a lot of dedicated engagement to educate these investors on non-state opportunities, especially in highly fragmented markets. We're proud, and as part of collaboration, learning, and adaptation, really to take and apply this to our monitoring and evaluation and learning as well, because we have to ensure that investment is channeled only to economically disadvantaged learners. It's a very labor-intensive process, especially when it comes to issues like verifying data and showing and seeing how the partner schools are receiving the appropriate investment. Another important learning that we have is about the critical nature of engaging host country government at every level. In the education context, this is really important. Things like accreditation, certification, registration, and access to capital, collateral. And USAID missions are really key partners with host country governments, particularly when they're new host country governments, new administrations, new priorities in that transition phase, to ensure that the proper relationships and alignment is being forged. Also, improving education learning is a long-term prospect. It is not an overnight fix. These education outcomes and learning gains take time, whether it's tied to capital mobilization or not. And this has been exacerbated by the pandemic as well. That extends to measurement and learning as well. We also are finding a lot of applicability to other sectors such as in agriculture and how to use business service provider networks to work with schools and financial institutions. And the last lesson I leave for today, we're learning, is that blended finance to the education sector, as Christy noted, can really significantly improve and contribute to gender gains through early childhood development, workforce development, and the like. I'm really proud, privileged, and honored to be working with the Education Portfolio team and Endeavor. I'll be available after to speak with any of you who are interested more about our work. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
All right, thank you, Mike and Christy. At this time, I would like to welcome back Steve Shira to introduce and recognize the virtual participants for our next session.
Hey everyone, we're 1 hour away from this, so thank you all for your patience. But I gotta say, as the contracting officer representative, COR, I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but this is actually my favorite session that we're about to do. So it's a great honor of mine as a representative of USAID to introduce some of our local partners in Catalyze. Without these folks, we don't have a program. It's one thing for all of us to come in here in Washington to hear kind of all these high-level lessons that we have, but to hear what people are going through on the ground. And there's no better way to exemplify this than the next three speakers that we have here. And so we're going to have somebody from a bank, a business service provider, as well as a small medium enterprise. These are really exemplifying of what Catalyze can do and what we have done together all across the world in every sector. So before I introduce the partners, we're going to start with, there's going to be two videos here, my little introduction. The first video is going to be an example of a bank and success in Ethiopia that we have here, and then we'll get to the speakers after that. All right, thank you. So for our first panelist, I want to introduce Mr. Misgana Degafa from the Cooperative Bank of Orama. Cooperative Bank of Orama has successfully leveraged Catalyze's incentive program, enabling them to extend loans to $21 million to 165 small and medium enterprises. Mr. Degafa, the floor is yours for introduction.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve, for inviting me. My name is Misgana Degafa. I'm Director for Agricultural Financing at Cooperative Bank of Oromia, Ethiopia. Just to introduce briefly, it goes without saying that SMEs significantly contribute to job creation and attainment of sustainable development goal for developing countries like Ethiopia. Despite this important role in the economy, they have been kept out of formal financial services. The major goal of Cooperative Bank of Oromia after establishment in 2005 was to close the enormous financial service gap that rural communities and the small business owners has been experiencing, and to assist the effort they exert to reduce poverty. Cooperative Bank of Oromia is one of its kind in Ethiopia, with it is focused on cooperatives, agri-businesses, and small holder business financing. It has mass ownership and majorly owned by farmers. The bank collaborates with several parties interested in food security and the advancement of SMEs. One of our most successful collaboration has been made with Catalyze MS4G in blended financing. We able to finance more than 165 SMEs within 6 or 7 months. The loan amount was around 21 million USD. In fact, considering the volume of the finance need the SMEs has, this is not sufficient, but it could be taken as a good or a promising beginning to start with. Finally, I would like to thank Catalyze MS4G Ethiopian team for their continuous support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Degafa. So we're going to be hearing more from him when we conduct the panel. So next we're going to jump over to the Western Balkans, and it's my pleasure to introduce and acknowledge the exceptional contribution of Two Icons Consulting. Two Icons has facilitated the lending of $10 million to small and medium businesses in the Western Balkans. With a strong presence in the region, Two Icons works closely with small and medium enterprises, offering tailored approaches to strengthen their financial systems and provide expert advice to connect with banks. So this will be an example of a business service provider here. We're delighted to have Mr. Borislav Klajcik from Two Icons as a panel participant, and he'll be providing valuable insights as a business service provider, being that kind of go-between the banks and the small and medium enterprises. Turn it over to you.
Okay. First of all, I would like to greet all the participants of the meeting and to thank for the opportunity to organize it, for present our work. We are a small consulting firm, basically a hub of financial experts, with regular contacts with the bankers and clients as well. We are summarizing our experience and act as an intermediary in the sense that we are explaining clients which financing models are currently available on the market, taking into account their needs, and in accordance with them, we find the most favorable offer in terms of prices, due dates, collaterals, and so on. Clients are ready to engage in the credit process because we have established trust, and we are taking over the communication with the bank because it is more comfortable position for them, for the clients, because they know that they have support of the expert from the world of finance who know the rules and procedures in the banking sector. We help them to prepare better for the financing in order that we are familiar with the credit process inside the banking industry, as well as the rules of the bank credit policy. And accordingly, we are preparing credit proposals, conduct a financial screening of the company, and undertaking a communication with the banks by pre-agreed parameters with our clients. So we forwarding the data as we have prepared to the bank and carry out an intensive communication or correspondence with them. In case when credit is approved, we advise our clients on how to spend the funds and how to improve future communication with the bank. We literally prepare credit proposals, screen financial analysis which are major share of the credit process, and we translate an existing financial documentation of the client into language that is more understandable by the banking industry, making it much more easier for the bank managers who literally receive semi-finished products that they can only slightly modify and carry on for further decision making. Catalyze changed our way of the business because in addition of the preparation for credit process, we are also engaged into education of the company's management. And the basis of this type of cooperation is to improve financial reporting model, to making it more understandable to the people who are not from the world of finance and are too busy with operational business day-to-day basis. These are usually smaller SMEs whose managers, as I already mentioned, are too busy to organization for work and have full operational problems. Regular meetings are organized with them on monthly basis in order to determine the direction of in which companies is moving. This is a two-way process, and our desire is to show to them, to SMEs, what their real potential is. And great effort is being made to improve financial reporting, to make it more digital, to digitalize it, and in order for them to know what their real standing is, what their real results are, and which the banks takes into account when selecting potential clients for their portfolio. This can be classified under the program of financial literacy of clients, for which there is great potential here on our market, because they, especially those our targeted SMEs, are mostly not familiar with the real repayment capacities, profitability, ratio analysis, cash flow reports, and projection of their future growth and development. Our future plan for the SME market is to turn more toward education and toward developing a more modern model of financial reporting through the digitalization of financial function. This is the basis which we want to present ourselves to the market. And on this basis, we want to upgrade our offer as an external financial manager of the company and also the manager of their credit portfolio. And this is our mission. And apart from this, we would like to strengthen that we are very interested into developing further cooperation with the companies SME companies that are owned by the women, because the situation in this world is even more specific, and we are ready and devote more attention to cooperation with them in order to help them improve their reporting and their financial standing as a key for understanding the company's financial position. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, and for our last panelist, we're going to jump all the way to the Peruvian Amazon. It is my pleasure to introduce a small medium enterprise. If you notice, we have a pattern here of bank to business service provider to small medium enterprise. So this last one is going to be the CEO of Pat Fresh. Pat Fresh was supported by a bank that Catalyze worked with, Abaco, to increase, to offer better rates for companies like Pat Fresh in the Peruvian Amazon, and has made great strides to expand its businesses. Pat Fresh, like many businesses in the region, often faces challenges in securing finance and acquiring access to a line of credit. Through Catalyze's partnership with financial institutions, we've been able to increase lending to these enterprises that are often overlooked, enabling them to continue and expand these operations. So to speak on this, we're going to invite Mr. Wilfredo Silva, CEO of Pat Fresh, to shed more light on their work and their partnership with Catalyze.
Good morning. My name is Wilfredo Silva from the Pat Fresh family. I'm here to provide you an overview of Pat Fresh and respond to any questions you may have. Pat Fresh is a family business with 23 years in operations. We initiated in 2000, working in the Peruvian Amazon. The product that we focus on is baby banana, which is not a product that has been sold in large quantities here in Peru. We decided to launch the business by partnering with an array of small producers in the region. Early on, we had significant problems with narco traffickers, as they felt we had a product that would compete against coca leaves. As a result, we had many years in which we struggled. Around 2010, 2011, thanks to projects from USAID and others, we were provided the support required to turn things around and start growing the business. We were able to work with local producers in a more consistent manner. We have managed to gain certification, such as organic certification, among others. It has been a slow and tedious process, but we have managed and we continue to expand. We're also currently working to secure global GAP certification. We've been working with them for a couple of years, and we have made some significant progress, including establishing a traceability system. Our producers in the region have grown with us. We're facing pressures to continue to improve quality, and support that we're receiving has been very well received and very useful.
Awesome. Thank you for your valuable insights. I want to extend my appreciation personally to not only all of our partners who've spoken today, but also those present in the audience or those who are not here. Your partnerships is critical for the success of Catalyze. We couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without these panelists. We couldn't do it for the people that are not here as well. I did promise a second video. It's a really neat one. So before we get to our panel discussion, let me turn it over. We'll watch a brief video and then we'll get to the panels. Thank you.
El baby banana es un cultivo muy rústico, nativo y muy ecoamigable, digamos así, ¿no? Nos dimos cuenta que el Alto Guayaga era el lugar de producción natural. Es por eso que decidimos entrar a la zona. Cuando llegamos, el narcoterrorismo dominaba la zona. Pero gracias a Dios se pacificó y logramos nosotros desarrollar la certificación orgánica. Trabajar en la Amazonía es todo un reto. Buscar una línea de crédito es muy difícil, es muy complicado. Pero nos encontramos con Abaco, quienes en realidad fueron muy ágiles en el tema de comercial para poder nosotros tener acceso a un capital de trabajo con tasas de interés muy bajas, ¿no?
En el caso de un esquema de financiamiento, lo que se busca es que tenga una herramienta para poder generar el desarrollo. Al tener eso, crecemos todos juntos. A través del incentivo que brinda el programa de pagos por resultados de CATALYZE Perú, estamos ampliando el área de intervención para poder ofrecer mejores condiciones y tasas para la Amazonía.
Las empresas pequeñas siempre adolecen de capital de trabajo. Entonces nos ayudó bastante, porque nosotros ya no estábamos tan preocupados de cómo iba a llegar la liquidez. Entonces esto nos permitió que tuviéramos mayor tiempo para poder concentrarnos directamente a la producción, a la logística, a la comercialización, básicamente a eso.
Estas inyecciones de capital nos ha permitido ir creciendo y los agricultores que trabajan con nosotros se han formalizado. Todo esto, de hecho, nos ha permitido crecer con ellos y con su familia.
El caso de Pat Fresh es un negocio familiar y en el caso, digamos, de sus socios comerciales, sus agricultores, también está conformado por familia. Y eso representa mucho, digamos, el pensamiento y la visión, que un emprendedor es una oportunidad, no solo de negocio, sino de crecimiento en general.
Para mí, Pat Fresh, en una sola palabra, es familia.
All right, next I would like to turn the floor over to Loren Rawlings, who's the country director for MS4G, and she will be moderating our virtual panel on what private sector engagement looks like.
Thanks so much, Regina. Pleased to join everyone this morning and afternoon and evening, depending where you're calling from. I'm joining from Addis Ababa. As you've heard from several of my colleagues, Catalyze collaboration with the private sector has helped increase access to finance in countries ranging from Sri Lanka to Honduras to Burkina Faso to drive outcomes, including economic empowerment of women, private sector development, food security, and early childhood care and education. And as you just heard from Catalyze partners in Peru, the Western Balkans, and Ethiopia, we have formed powerful partnerships with local organizations, including financial institutions and business advisors, to meet a wide variety of development outcomes. I'm very pleased to dig into the details about our work together and the lessons learned in conversation with the three partners you've just heard from. So to set the stage, I'd like to direct the first question to Wilfredo. Could you speak to the challenges generally facing small and medium enterprises in attempting to access finance from different sources?
Small and medium enterprises in the Amazon region have very low levels of access to finance. It is very complicated to access financing in the region as interest rates are very high and financial institutions see as a very risky investments. Producers are required to provide collateral and have to meet other requirements that make it difficult to access finance. It is a very difficult situation for us. We have been fortunate to have a relationship with Abaco. Without their support, we would not have been able to remain in business over the last 20 years.
Thank you, Wilfredo. And I hear some common themes, interest rates, collateral, and the perceived risk of the SME segment. It would be really helpful, I think, to hear about this from a banker's perspective, albeit one in a different market. Ms. Ghana, could you talk about the challenges of lending to SMEs in Ethiopia?
Okay, thank you, Lauren. The challenges of lending SME in Ethiopia can be seen from three different views. The first one is from SMEs themselves. They don't have experience in formal financial system, and they have poor financial recording system as well, and they don't have licenses. Most of SMEs here are informal. They don't have also awareness of the financial sector, the different loan products the bank offers, and they are scattered everywhere. Especially the problem even get worsened when it comes to women SME business owners. The other thing is from bank side. As stated earlier, banks require high collateral coverage, and as they are scattered everywhere, the operating cost is very high to finance SMEs. The banks also consider SMEs as riskful business, for they can't provide the documents that we require. On top of that, there are no sufficient banking products for SMEs. The third view is from a regulatory point of view. There is no preferential treatment for SMEs here in Ethiopia. They are required to present detailed documents and other financial aspects. The system is also very bureaucratic to get license. to pass through all this is very discouraging for SMEs.
Thank you, Ms. Ghana. You almost perfectly teed up a question for our business advisor partner in the Western Balkans. Borislav, I suspect that especially some of the shortcomings described by Ms. Ghana in terms of documentation, understanding of the process, et cetera, you heard some familiar themes in your own work in the Western Balkans. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit specifically, you mentioned in your introduction the importance of education and connectivity, but I wonder if you could tell us specifically about how Two Icons Consulting, what do you do specifically to prepare SMEs to qualify for financing, and what do you do to connect SMEs to financial institutions so that both sides have a better understanding of the other? Borislav?
Yes, well, this is always the big issue because neither one of the sides wants to back up. Clients has their own perspective, bank have their own perspective and very strict and over-regulated credit policy. So what is the key to make this situation, to make this flow, is for us to educate clients on their basic financial standings and also a proper presentation of their business model toward the banking industry. Because banks want to hear very clearly what are the key points of their business model are, and what is the key of their financial standings, and what are their future projections in order to calculate possible revenues regarding interest loan on this bank. So what is the biggest issue? To make more understandable position of the clients to the bank and vice versa.
Great, thank you. Ms. Ghana, I'd like to ask again about the bank perspective on some of this. As you might have heard, Catalyze has engaged more than 30 financial institutions globally and mobilized more than $220 million in financing, largely through a pay-for-results approach to blended finance, often with institutions like the Cooperative Bank of Romania. Two parts. Could you tell us about CBO's experience working with the Catalyze pay-for-results approach? And then why was Cooperative Bank of Romania interested in partnering with Catalyze? And what did you learn about the SME market as a result of the partnership?
Okay, thank you, Lauren. To start from almost the last question, CBO is interested to work with Catalyze MS4G for it aligns with its mission. CBO has the mission of reaching the SMEs at grassroots level and to expand its business to the rural community as well. The Catalyze project assists us to achieve this mission. That's what interested us the most. On top of that, there is also good incentive, which is pay for result. That's also attractive for us. The lesson we learned in our engagement with SMEs that the SME businesses are not as risky as bankers perceive, because as I mentioned it earlier, we financed more than 165 SMEs within 6 months. The repayment is more than 95%, which is really great. Even when you see the SMEs growing and improving, that is also one motivating factor for us. Thank you.
No, thank you. We're really gratified to have a partner that's mission aligned like CBO. In the brief video we saw at the beginning of this session, there was a mention of a couple of new products. I'm wondering if you can tell us about those products and how they serve the SME segment, and anything else about how your business has changed as a result of working with Catalyze to invest in the SME segment.
Okay, we do have different digital products for SME. As you have seen it on the video, for example, Michu Digital Uncollateralized Financing is one of the new products we have. Collateral is one big issue when it comes to financing SMEs. That's why we introduced the first of its kind in our country, which is digital uncollateralized financing. It was basically a micro loan, but now we're working on increasing the loan limit to entertain the requests of more SMEs. We're motivated after our engagement with Catalyze to do this. The other thing is we have also digital financing dedicated to the agri sector, which is called Furtu. We are piloting that to finance input for agriculture sector, which is also excluded from the former financial sector. On top of that, we do have a dedicated department for MSME financing, both at headquarters and at districts. Therefore, we are working aggressively on the SME financing here.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much. Borislav, a similar question, or a question in a similar vein. So what has the partnership with Catalyze done to change how you engage, how Two Icons Consulting engages with SMEs? What are some of the things you're doing differently or doing more of as a result of the partnership?
When we started this project 2 years ago, we thought that our act as an intermediary or for the clients to the banks would be sufficient. But since we become more familiar with the point of view from the client side, we realized that there is a lack of understanding, there is a lack of basic financial knowledge. And we broadened our activity to further finance, to further acknowledge them, to get more familiar with their financial structure. So education of the clients, especially financial education of the SME clients, is become our first aim, so that it can serve as a basis for future development, as a future cooperation, communication with the financial institution, with the market, and so on. So first of all, education. Through this program, we managed to acknowledge the fact that clients need more help in this way.
Great, thank you. I'd like to turn back to our SME partner and a little bit about how the fact that Pat Fresh did have a long-standing relationship with Abaco, but that the Catalyze partnership with Abaco, which was incentivizing the financial institution to expand into the Amazon region, and in order to increase lending to local SMEs there. So Wilfredo, could you tell us about how that intervention helped Pat Fresh further improve access to finance?
We have had a long relationship with Abaco. They've recently informed us that they're now offering credit products that are more adapted to our needs, and that they are now operating out of the region rather than just Lima as before. Abaco has attractive interest rates and have been very supportive of us and our neighbors. Previously, as I've noted, we have had support from them, but it has mostly been in the commercialization phase of the product and not in the production phase of it. They have informed me now that they have increased their presence in the region and that they have adapted financial products to support Pat Fresh and their producers in growing, expanding, improving quality, and acquiring the technology that we need. This has been a very recent development that USAID and ABACO have brought to us, and they are really providing the support that we need to continue to grow and implement new projects in the area.
Great. So really pleased to hear about the results so far, and I'm quite keen to hear about where we go from here. So Borislav, could you talk a bit about what are 2Icons Consulting's plans to continue serving the SME market?
Yes, we are basically a hub of former bankers. The four of us are the core of the 2Icons Consulting firm. Plus, we have contacts among all the other our former colleagues inside the banking industry. And what we want is to regularly contact banks in order to check all the available products on the markets regarding pricing, terms, structure, collateral, and so on. And in order to inform our clients accordingly, we must be up to date. We are all with the current offer from the bank. So what we want to do is to establish us as an external financial manager for the company, to modernize financial function of the company, to modernize accounting system inside the company in order for them to be more aware and to be much quicker connect to the banks, so the decision on possible credit can be reached very, very quickly.
Great. So a real partner in working with financial institutions so that SMEs will indeed be engines of growth in the region. Ms. Ghana, same question. How is the Cooperative Bank of Oromia planning to continue and even expand services for the Ethiopian SME segment?
Okay, as I've said it earlier, we're working hard on expanding our reach to SMEs. Thanks to CATALYZE program, we are linked to business advisory institutions and SMEs through the platform created by the program. Using that platform and the connection we had already built, we're working on expanding it both digitally and through the traditional financing platform, because most of them are not digital friendly, and that the network access is also not good, especially when you go far out of Addis. Therefore, we are working on expanding the SME lending in both ways, where we are onboarding that they can advise SMEs. We'll work on it further. Thank you.
Thank you. Very pleased to hear about that strengthening of the market system there. Really just want to take a moment, Borislav and Ms. Ghana and Wilfredo, to say thank you so much for your partnership, for your participation today, and for your commitment to advancing economic transformation and growth. Just a huge thank you from all of us on CATALYZE. A big appreciation for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I'd like to thank Loren for moderating, Ms. Ghana, Borislav, and Wilfredo for your participation in the panel and sharing your perspectives on private sector engagement. And then finally also to Ignacio Estevez, the CATALYZE activity lead, for his support in Spanish interpretation for Wilfredo. As we move into our closing, at this time I would like to invite Carly Anderson, Project Communications Manager for CATALYZE, to showcase the CATALYZE resources.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. I am up here on behalf of the Catalyze Communications team. We have a series of learning resources that we've put on the event registration URL that you use to sign up for this event. You can find a lot of information there, including fact sheets, learning briefs, a lot of work that has gone into everything that you saw here today. So these resources are available now on the website, and we will be sharing a URL with you through the post-event email, and we'll also be publishing a post on our Medium blog page later today, which you can find the link there as well. And there's also some QR codes that you can see on the agenda posters, and then downstairs in the networking booth, you can scan that and then also find the learning resources there. So thank you all so much, and I'll turn it back over to Regina.
Thanks, Carly. Finally, I would like to invite Amanda Fernandez, the Catalyze Chief of Party, to share more about collaborating with Catalyze.
Last but not least, and the person between you and the refreshments. And getting refreshed. So let me go quickly. First, I just want to say what an honor it is to be here today, and so excited to finally get to this event. We've been planning for it for many, many months, and it's great to be here. And you see how lucky I am to work with such an amazing group of individuals. That is really truly a pleasure of Catalyze, and we have such wonderful partners in the field that make it all work. So thank you to all of you. We've spent our time today reflecting on what Catalyze does, what we're learning from this unique global blended finance effort, and now you have, thanks to our great communications team, access to all our resources, so you can continue to explore how to do blended finance and private capital mobilization across the globe. I'm going to be closing the technical portion of our event today by providing guidance to all of you on how you, our key stakeholders, can engage and work with Catalyze existing and new activities. But before I launch into the how, I do want to talk about the why. Why should you work with Catalyze in the current context? Catalyze is a one-stop shop for private sector engagement and blended finance design and implementation. We're managing the largest portfolio of operational blended finance platforms for USAID across the globe. So if you work with Catalyze, you're getting the benefit of accessing all of this knowledge and experience in real time to design programs that are based on AID's most innovative and freshest programming. So it's very likely that what you're looking for, we already have operating in some way, shape, or form across the globe. You don't have to start from scratch. Another great benefit of starting a new activities with Catalyze is the ease in which a mission can opt in and commit resources to get the blended finance party started. The competitive process was already met, and so you have at your fingertips a proven implementer at the ready to assist in design and implementation of a new activity. We can get started immediately with open and fluid communication, which is often tough to have in a traditional procurement process. Another unique feature of Catalyze is its powerful global monitoring and evaluation and communications teams. Finance and private sector partners are global actors, and having a team that can accurately report on our progress and share what's working on a global scale is a great short-term benefit, while those capacities are simultaneously being built locally through our activities on the ground. And also pre-cooked into our Catalyze activity designs is an assessment and co-creation process that demands active involvement from local stakeholders from the private sector, governments, civil society. So you're assured of getting a design that's grounded in local reality, what local actors think makes sense. And when you start new development efforts with the right people at the table, you're more likely to sustain them after the program ends and build on USAID's localization agenda. So Catalyze may be a global project, but our financing and technical assistance solutions are very intentionally locally led, which is just good development. Be assured that when you buy into Catalyze, the majority of funds are not staying in DC. They are being distributed in the form of subawards to hundreds of local actors to lead on this work. The action on Catalyze is local, and our subaward strategy promotes this localization by focusing on the types of awards like fixed amount awards, pay for results of contracts, grants, and others that allow for this flexibility and innovation to mobilize capital, and prepare those actors that manage these awards to eventually become prime award holders themselves. So we've built, since 2019, essentially an army of hundreds of private sector actors, mostly local, en route to mobilizing billions in financing between now and the end of 2024 for a range of development sectors. But our contract runs until 2027, so you could say we're just getting started. And finally, when you're with Catalyze, you're not alone. Anyone on Catalyze can pick up the phone and get TA and guidance from other actors within the Catalyze universe and others. Our teams can facilitate those connections from activity to another, and you can find out how people are doing things, what they're learning. So let's get to the how. How does a new activity come about? You should know that Catalyze is currently looking to expand our portfolio by roughly $80 million, so we have room for growth. First, one or a few of these stakeholders need to get together and decide that they'd like to collaborate with USAID to start a new activity. Who are these stakeholders? Well, they are on this slide. Of course, nothing can happen without USAID in this Catalyze endeavor, but in no way is Catalyze just about USAID. AIDS capital is used almost as first risk capital to mobilize local actors to do the actual work and generate the impact. And while each activity is different, generally our stakeholders across the board include donors, financial institutions, transaction advisors, private companies, private actors, civil society, and local governments. Starting up a Catalyze activity is relatively easy and quick and can be led by one or a number of stakeholders via a couple of different entry points. But the easiest thing to do is to pick up the phone and call, namely to Catalyze's contracting officer, Representative Stephen Shira, or his co-manager in this effort, Suzanne Lee. Alternatively, you can reach out to me or my deputy, Amanda Gravy, you heard from earlier, and the conversation should really be about the problem that you're trying to solve, the resources you're looking for to make it happen, and what you're bringing towards the effort. USAID and Palladium then have to agree that the idea is something that we can take on, fits within our mandate, and then resources are added to the contract in the form of a modification, and that's kind of it. We're up and running. So new activities designed today can be broad in scope, but parts or all of these do have to focus on areas that fall under the USAID's Center for Education, which will manage the contract starting in FY 2025, namely blended finance work that touches on workforce development, non-state education, early child care and development, social protection, and women building resilience. Once we have a new activity commitment, we go through the following 9 steps to finalize the design and move into implementation in this graphic. You'll recognize most of these things from traditional procurements. I guess the difference here on Catalyze is all of this is co-designed together with Palladium and USAID as part of the implementation. So what could a new activity look like? And I literally just made this up. This is an idea that I came up with that could be interesting. A new regional activity in Central America, potentially, that could use, I don't know, $15 million of USAID funds to mobilize private sector engagement, say in workforce development solutions. That could leverage maybe 4 times that amount in new capital to support development outcomes and achieve our important objectives in Central America. So, look, with that, I will close. I do want to thank my fantastic Catalyze team, Counterpart International, for their allowing us to use this lovely space, and our supporters in this effort, our friends from Acute Insight, for making everything work so wonderfully well. And again, sometimes it can be quite challenging for the tech to work, and you guys did a great job. I look forward to talking to many of you about the design of new activities or the continuation of our existing activities and how we can make these all so much more impactful. So have a great rest of the day, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Amanda. And thanks to all of you for your time and engagement in today's session. I have just a couple closing announcements so you have an idea of what's next. First, before we move into the networking portion of today's event, we do want to ask that you take just a couple minutes to complete the evaluation for today. You can use the QR code that you see here on the screen, and you can also find the link in the evaluation tab on the event site. To our virtual participants, and it looks like we had upward of 85 folks join us. We were excited you were able to participate virtually in today's session. We want to remind you all to use the attendees section on the event site to be able to more easily connect with colleagues on your own. Folks in the room can also do that afterwards as well. For those of you who are here in person, we do invite you to join us at the networking booths that we have set up downstairs on the mezzanine level. So you'll hit the M level on the elevators to get down there. You do not need an escort to be there. It's significantly easier to use the restrooms up here because you don't need access to those. Down there, they are on another floor. You will need to find someone with keys, so we'll make sure you have what you need, but just be aware of that as you're leaving this space and entering the other. Please note we will provide light refreshments and we'll have that space open and available until noon. Our hope is that that will foster an opportunity for you all to continue to make connections, to go out to lunch externally, to continue networking on your own. I want to remind you, please do make sure to take your belongings with you when you leave this space and move into the other, because you would need to be escorted back to be able to access this area. And with that, we want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.